Well, that might be our big start. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you can hear me. If you can, a warm welcome to you. This is today's webinar, and a very warm welcome wherever you are around the world. A number of places there I know people are watching in from. So good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to anyone around the world. Special thanks for the Suzhou campus to joining us today. I think there's about 120 people watching us over on that campus. Welcome to you. And for anyone watching this back in replay, I hope we did well. My name is Justin King. I'm going to be your moderator for today, and we were just talking when all of those photos were up on the screen, and pretty clear that I might be the most handsome person in this panel, but definitely I am the least intelligent. We've got a pretty amazing group of alumni here tonight, and we're just so thankful that they can join us. I will introduce them soon. But I just want to talk a little bit about how today's going to run and what the webinar is about. The webinar is finding a niche within the diverse hospitality industry, and it's something that I've been keen to talk about for some time. I'll talk a little bit to that fairly shortly. Before I do start talking though, if there are any questions coming from those attending tonight, please just throw them into the chat box, or the chat box, which I think is on the right-hand side of your screen. And we will try to get through them in real time. No need to keep up to the end of the webinar today, just ask them as you go. So Q&A box in the right-hand side. And there is so much experience on this panel today, guys. It's a great time to ask some questions. May well be one of those rare times where you have some pretty incredible hoteliers in the room that you can ask questions to. For today's title, we were working really hard with what we might be able to offer to graduates going through an unprecedented time right now. The big C word's been around for almost 2 years and it's been talked about a lot. It's not what we wanted to focus on today. What we did want to focus on is how you can actually navigate this industry and get the best out of your career while having a good, rewarding experience at the same time. Now, like so many of you, I worked hard studying the art and the science of hospitality at school, but then you're released out into the world, into this huge industry that is really diverse and very niched. There is a range of properties, of disciplines, of geographies that you can go to. How do you know where you're going to make your best mark? And how are you going to have fun doing so? Now, I thought our best weapon available to us was a clear long-term strategy that maybe talked to what properties I'd work in, and maybe what sort of places I'd like to work, and definitely what sort of job titles I would like to have. But what that plan didn't allow for was all the shifts that come in life. I mean, you all know that life doesn't go exactly how you wanted it to go. There are twists, turns, opportunities along the way. And my plan didn't allow for that. It also didn't allow for how I was going to grow as a person, about mentors that would come and go from my life, and even how my day-to-day life would change. So it's these sliding door moments that I want to explore today. Because hand on heart, as good as my strategy was when I graduated, way back in 2002, I am nowhere near where I thought I would be here in Fiji, running a small luxury property. I was a world away from what I wanted to be doing 20 years after I graduated, and yet I've had a fun, rewarding career in doing so. So it's interesting to talk about some of the ways that these changes, and what weapons can you have when you first get out into the industry that might be able to help you through this. So to help us navigate this, I've called upon the intelligent people among the room here today, and I'd like to introduce them in just a moment. But what's really interesting about the group of people that we have today is the diversity in backgrounds that they've chosen. They've chosen really different paths. They've chosen different disciplines. They've chosen a range of different properties, and even the way that they have progressed through their career has been remarkably different. So I think we have a lot to learn from what they might be able to offer today. Again, encourage you to ask questions. It's a casual chat, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. Our first panelist today is Emily DeQuino. Now, when compared to my aged self, Emily is relatively recent graduate, which makes the impact that she's already had on our industry all the more impressive. She graduated in 2015 and then began her career as a sales executive for QT Hotels, overseeing weddings and VIP events. She then moved to Sydney to take up a position as sales and events executive with Pier 1. And then Emily decided to leave for London, spending almost 3 years at the renowned Kimpton Fitzroy as senior manager for sales and events. She returned to Australia in 2020, presumably amongst all the COVID mess going on, where she accepted a position at the Remington Hotel in Orange. Now, in little under 2 years, Emily has enjoyed a meteoric success to the position of hotel manager, and that's the position she currently is serving today. Emily, welcome to the panel. Our next panelist graduated in 2004, Brendan Van Blerk. Upon graduating, headed straight to the United States. He accepted a position as manager in training with Marriott Hotels Florida and returned to Australia in 2013 after a successful number of executive positions in America. Brendan joined a small hotel company that some of you may have heard of called IHG Hotels and Resorts. Within 2 years, he became general manager of the Holiday Inn Potts Point and then went on to lead the Watermark Hotel Gold Coast before becoming the first general manager of the brand new Voco collection of properties. In 2019, Brendan was plucked from his property to become the Director of Operations and Support for IHG for all of Australasia and Japan, and is currently the Director of New Hotels and Openings for Australasia and Japan. And again, very humbled and welcome to you, Brendan.
Thank you. And Justin, I just want to make sure, is there a tsunami happening in the background? Because I'm watching the little shells on the lamps and I'm concerned about you, sir.
There's no cyclone yet, but just let me get the page here that
Anyone else was worried about that? I hope it wasn't just me. There we go.
But it's gone, very localized.
Okay,
you won't dispute the most handsome on the panel, though.
Not publicly.
Our third panelist is Nathan Frost, who graduated in 1996. Nathan's in the top right corner of your screen. Nathan began his career in food and beverage before beginning management traineeship with a small company that you may have heard of, also called Accor. He moved to Sofitel Melbourne before, as operational assistant to the general manager, and then became an executive assistant manager for numerous Accor properties in Queensland and Victoria. He is currently he then moved to New Zealand and held the general manager title of Ibis Auckland, Ibis Wellington, and finally repatriated back to Australia to run the Ibis Adelaide. He is currently the area general manager of operations for Western Australia, for all the properties for Accor. And would you please welcome Nathan? Nathan, welcome to you.
Thanks, Justin. And can I just say and acknowledge that I'm on Whadjuk and Noongar land, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where I'm coming from today.
Thank you very much. Finally, I'd like to welcome another graduate of Blue Mountains, graduated in 2001, and that's Jack Wadagda. Jack's bio reads like a renaissance of luxury hotels. He began his leadership career in Australia, crossing across both front office and food and beverage disciplines, and finally into the revenue stream. He fulfilled a number of leadership roles for a diverse range of properties in this time. Jack then moved to Singapore with the Capella Group before moving to the Four Seasons in Thailand as Regional Director of Revenue. After a brief stint with Kempinski Hotels, Jack moved back to operations as pre-opening Executive Assistant Manager of the Ritz-Carlton in Ubud, Bali. In 2016, Jack was appointed a General Manager of an Alila property, which was later to be awarded the title of China's Best Resort. Currently, Jack is General Manager of the Six Senses Chengdu. Jack, welcome to you.
Thank you, Justin, and ni hao to the students in Suzhou.
Thank you. Brendan, we might start with yourself, sir. You've just listened to a very flattering introduction from myself about your experience. How surreal is it to think of where you've come in the last 16 years compared to what you thought you'd be doing when you graduated? Or has it all panned out pretty much the way you thought it would be? You're on mute, sir.
Well, you didn't hear me say panned out exactly as I'd intended, of course. I think it's one of those things, you're absolutely right. There is the initial desire of the titles that we want. And for me, coming out of school, I remember getting the bug and realizing that I was going to be a GM. I was going to be a GM. That was the benchmark and the the strive for. And so then every role in between hopefully led towards that and across the food and beverage and rooms and around the hotel operations in general. Because I also didn't know how far the horizon stretched beyond the GM, or that it does go sideways beyond a GM, and your measure of what does success look like actually changes over time as you actually become better informed. But what helps inform you of that is actually when you look back and you can kind of see how the moves, the choices you've made actually do line up to get you to where you believe success now is. I remember getting to the first GM role and being like, area GM, that's next. All right, here we go. And then I looked at the, head of country and all that sort of stuff. But the reality is you have to be absolutely open to what might come next. Have an ideal plan of what's around you at the time, because it could be a rooms div role, it could be an F&B role, it could be a role in housekeeping, it could be a role in sales and marketing and events. But be open to them, because when you look back one day, they might be the role that equipped you the best for success in the next role you're going to take. And again, when you look back, hopefully the dots all line up.
How do you know when you're in that position if it is the best property that's aligning, or the best role that you can particularly have to align you for success?
I think for me, it's always come down to a couple of different pieces. One is around, does the role fulfill the purpose in which I find to be rewarding? Is it a purpose that I agree with? Is it a purpose that I can pour all of my energy into? And does it lend towards my development, learning, and growing? Because the next role should always stretch you in those. If you think the role that you're about to take, I can do it with my eyes closed, you're probably not challenging yourself enough, because it's something you already have the skill set for. You should be going into a role that you're probably about 70% baked for, because you need to learn to grow and be comfortable learning to grow. Otherwise, you're just going to be repeating the same thing over and over again. So for me, I put some guardrails around, does that next role fulfill those obligations and get me one step closer to the 10-year goal potentially.
Sorry to jump in, Justin, but I think that's one of the key things about finding your niche in the industry is knowing your shortfalls and assessing where you're at in terms of your career and looking at what the options are that are out there that are going to assist you in growing. Because if you're not self-aware of where your shortcomings are, then that's a problem in itself. So having that understanding of where you're at from an experience point of view and what you still need to learn, and then seeking out those roles that allow you to gain that experience.
Okay, so when I graduated, I certainly wasn't sure of what my shortfallings were, Nathan. How can I get across those really quickly?
Look, I think you've got to be committed to the role that you're in. So, I mean, I don't know what it was like for the other panelists, but there was, when we had to apply for roles on graduation, we either had to send a fax, email was just about coming, but most of the hotels wanted a written application letter and resume, which you then had to post, believe it or not. Now, if I'm speaking language that people don't understand, I apologise. But, and so first of all, you've got to get a role. And I think once you're in that role, you've got to give it 100% and learn what you can learn from it. I mean, there's many hotel companies out in the world that have fantastic training programs. And if you're open to learning and want to learn within those companies, or if it's an individual hotel, as long as you're learning and doing the best you can in terms of the role that you're in currently, that's all you need to worry about. And then you start getting the experience. If you're in a hotel and you're working in food and beverage, you start looking and seeing what maybe the fine dining restaurant's doing, or you're looking at what the assistant manager and front office is doing, and you start getting, interested in those roles, and then you sort of follow it a bit more, and then suddenly this interest turns into a desire that you want to go and try that role over there. And I think once you sort of get onto that path, that's where you sort of have the ability to move around, because you're involved in the process.
Absolutely. Jack, you've moved through a number of large companies successfully through your career. How do you know when it's time to move on and when it's time to change direction?
Yeah, look, I think I go back to my goals to become a general manager, just like I think most of us here, right? But one thing for sure, I had no idea how to get there. Okay, how fast to get there, and whether it's through rooms division or food and beverage or sales and marketing or whatnot. So, I started in food and beverage. Once I get comfortable in a particular role, in a particular company, in a particular location, that's usually an inkling to think about, can I learn more, right? Can I learn more in food and beverage? And then I move on to rooms division, same thing. Went through the same cycles again after, a number of years, right? But one thing to advise for, the students that are still students of hotel management is take your time, at the same time, evaluate. Sometimes we're all very overly confident, whether we've learned a lot, but in reality, your mentor may say something else. That could be a supervisor, that could be a boss, that could be someone in the industry that don't necessarily work with, right? So I went through that little steps, questioning, self-critique, comparing at the same time. Sales and marketing was a key part of my journey, okay? I think one would say, is it a career or is it a journey? For me, it's always a journey, because like Brendan say, today you're a general manager, tomorrow you'll be an area GM, and then you turn around and say, look, nah, I think I want to have a bit more time in the office, or, it doesn't suit everybody. And then your life may also bring a different package as you grow up in your career ladder. You've got the third kid or the fourth kid coming, or you've got family that you want to go back to. So it's really hard to say. But once you get comfortable, it's time to start the questioning meal all over again.
I think that's really interesting insight. And you hear that a lot from old people like us saying, take your time. But you had a pretty meteoric rise in your career. So how do you square the two bits of knowledge there?
Meteorite? No, I don't think so. In fact, mine was a little bit of a zigzag. So I started in food and beverage. Then, I was comfortable. But when you're comfortable at the same time, you don't know whether you're comfortable or you're lost. It's two sides of the coin, right? Then I zigzag, I moved to rooms division, and then I went back to F&B for a little bit. And then I realized, I said, look, I look at all the sales, people in hotels, they're smart, they're they get the business. And there is, of course, the perks of wine and dine with clients, right? I want to be them. I want to learn. Brendan, you do that a lot with your, a lot of developers, right?
I know what you're talking about. No,
yeah.
Never heard
but anyway, zigzagging. So it's not a straight line, but it's like this, and sometimes it's like this. So I don't even know if GM is the top of the mountain at the moment. It's hard to say. I'm still learning.
Well,
Jack,
it's excuse me.
I was going to say, Jack stole that's the exact term that I use for my career. I zigzag, and I think I spoke about a while ago the fact that when I entered the industry, I felt that there was a food and beverage side and a rooms division side, and that was really only the two ways to go. And then the back of house functions such as finance or sales and marketing, you weren't ever going to become a GM from that way. And I made sure that when I was progressing through my career that I had constant zigzagging to make sure that I wasn't doing too much food and beverage, wasn't doing too much rooms, because you want to get that overall experience across all departments, not just food and beverage and front office, but as Jack said, you zigzag over here and then you zigzag over there. So I think the key factor in all of that, and from what I'm hearing from Jack and I know from Brendan and Emily, is mobility. If you don't have the drive to be mobile, and also as Jack said, it's a lot harder when you've got 2, 3, 4 kids and a partner or whatever else. You've got to be mobile and take the advantage of the fact that you can be mobile. And maybe in the world as we are right now, it's a little bit harder. I get that. But if you can be mobile, to go and have these experiences in these amazing hotels, in these departments, in the different brands, in the different countries, that is the best advice that I can give to anyone, that you're going to learn the most from being able to be mobile and go and experience these, or have these experiences rather than be committed to staying in one hotel and working your way up over a same period of time.
Well, it's all about conscious decision, though, sometimes, isn't it? Emily, was this a conscious decision to fall into the niche that you began in?
No.
And have now evolved?
Oh, definitely not. I really thought when I left uni that I was like, oh, knew everything, really thought and I still don't actually have the dream to be a GM. I think maybe I'm the only one on this panel. I actually never wanted to even be a hotel manager, even though I am one right now. I really just wanted to be really great at whatever I did. And it's funny, listening to the guys chat about the last particular question, one of the particular roles, the role I had at Pier 1, I was actually only there for 2 years. The first year I just went in as a sales coordinator. Then after a year, I was sales executive. But then the role I got in London was a senior sales and events manager. And that was like such a huge chunk to jump. But the reason I felt that I could do it, which like I said, a lot of us think we need to be 100% of what the job ad says, but you can't really. Why apply for a job that you already know how to do? But the reason I felt that I was at least that 70% or that 80% of that job ad was because when I was in that sales executive role, I personally pursued finding out other things. So when I was in there, I was like, oh, I want to do a bit of event planning because I'm interested. I would spend time with my finance director to learn how the back-end operations work. So I ended up being able to do opera configuration and understand why the money works this way, understanding how to do budget and forecasting. So I actually, even though I had that title, I tried to expand that title and that range of what I could get out of it personally, because for me, title doesn't really matter. It's more about what I can get out of it and what I can do with that, because that was the biggest shock. I honestly didn't think I'd get that job in London because there was such a big title jump. But then everything on my resume that read under what I did at my last job was so vast that I felt like that really helped. And so when it comes back, I guess, to your original question, Justin, of if this is where I thought I would be heading, not really. I started in F&B and I did like events. I will be very honest with everyone. I had a bad run in a couple of jobs and it did really crush my spirit for hospitality for a little while. So much so that I'd left hospitality. I went to join the army. I'd passed my fitness test and everything. I was on my way, and then I realized that I can't do this. I do love hospitality that much. You can't let a bad run stop you from your dream and your passion, because this is what I'm really passionate about. I mean, why else would we do these hours and work this hard? But I think, as the guys said, being open to opportunities and diversity, not just running that right line, because it is very wide, the industry. What you don't realize, it's not just like this and then GM. It's extremely wide, and that I didn't realize until I was in the industry. I didn't really feel that way at uni. I felt it was very structured, and that panicked me when I left uni. I felt a lot of pressure to be great as soon as I left and to be successful as soon as I left, even though I didn't know what that word meant really, and still don't really to this day, because I don't know what I actually want to do. I kind of fell into this well, I wasn't planning on leaving London. I fell back into Orange and in regional, and I fell into this hotel manager position after my 1 year anniversary at this position. This job is coming up in 4 days. So yeah, it's okay not to know, you know. The rest of the panelists wanted to be that GM and worked hard by zigzagging to get there. But it's also okay not to have that end goal, because you never know what comes up. As long as you commit and work hard at whatever it is you're currently doing, doors will open for you. And that's, yeah, don't be afraid of not knowing, because I was, and that was hard for me to work past.
I think there's as a second piece to pick up on that, because I totally agree with everything, Emily, and it is that, and Jack spoke about it, and so did Nathan, it's just no path is the same, and cut yourself some slack. Do not measure your own success versus your friend next to you, or somebody you know, or somebody who graduated a couple of years ahead, or you know, your closest friend, because you will all have very different experiences in hospitality, because you are very different people in hospitality. So it is okay to say, I may actually travel this journey at a different pace than somebody else, because of that's just the way it's going to progress for me, and that is totally okay. Cut yourself some slack. Do not think it has to measure up to someone else's pathway, trajectory, plan, etc. Use those as guideposts if you want, but really just have good conversations with people about what does ready look like, what does next look like, but don't ever compare yourself or the pace at which you think you have to do something to be successful, because you will never measure up then. You're measuring the wrong thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Can I add to that as well? You know, we hear the saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I think that's true to an extent, but people know you because of what you've achieved in your role, not for the fact that you just happen to know them. I think it's misinterpreted in that way. And what I would say is that a lot of my career growth has come from the fact that my manager knows me. And I've worked in some big hotels, but they knew me because of the work and the hard work that I was putting into the role that I was currently doing. So therefore, you get, you know, you're seen and you're known, and when you're front of mind for someone who's looking to train someone up or move them into a senior position, or offer a course that may cost a reasonable amount of money for the company, and you're front of mind, then that gives you the best possible chance to take advantage of these situations when they occur. So profiling yourself is so important, and the best way you can do that is work hard in the role that you're doing. Have conversations with mentors or your supervisors or your managers, and let them know what, you know, when you know that you're ready to potentially move to the next role. Have those conversations, and you know, then you're going to be at forefront of mind that when these roles suddenly come up, and as I said, it might not be in that hotel, but it might be in the hotel down the road. These opportunities will open up for you first, because people know what you're wanting to achieve.
Nathan, I really love that theme that you're picking up on. Is there anything that really stands out to you that you would have done differently in your career?
Yeah, I rose too quickly at one stage. I rose too quickly, and I was so driven on trying to get to not so much to the general manager role. I knew that I still had a way to go, but to get to that sort of second in charge role, you know, an executive assistant manager, hotel manager type role. I pushed and pushed for it, and then when I got there, I did okay in a couple of the roles, but then one of the roles, I wasn't up for the task. And again, that self-realization was there, that maybe I'd gone too hard too early, and maybe I'm convincing, but or maybe I interview well, I don't know, but I definitely risen too quickly. But the thing I don't regret is what it taught me. And it taught me about that, to take my time to learn in the roles that you're in, make sure that you only move when you're 100% ready to move into those roles. And that point in my career meant that I went to New Zealand I had an unbelievable mentor in New Zealand, and about I think it was a year and a half later, I got my first general manager role, and I knew it was I'd made the right decision to do that, and I knew I was ready for the general manager role when I sat down in the seat on the first day and realised I have no idea what I'm doing. But it was my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife, said they wouldn't have put you in this role if you didn't know what you were doing. But you know, as Brendan said, I wasn't fully there in terms of readiness. But that's the whole point. You got to learn some of it on the in the product that you're in. And whilst it was a hard time for me to have that realization that you know, I potentially might not have a job in the near future, you know, a year and a half, 2 years later, I was off on my GM career.
Thank you. Just had a great question come in from Scott Bear. As mentioned previously, with the growth through positions and being open to spreading yourself across departments, the zigzag, what would the advice be if you are coming towards a high-level role within one department, however, haven't tried, say, sales and marketing or finance, and to get that experience would effectively be taking a step back? Jack, did you want to have any comment on that one? Great question, by the way, Scott.
Yeah, hi, sorry. My line is not that great, so I'll speak through my pictures. The only thing I can't do is the moving the mouth on this.
Well, you look very relaxed on our screen, albeit a little sedentary.
Okay, so I think to answer Scott's question, I mean, it depends on different people, right? I mean, for me, I would always take my chances, whether it's step down in another department, you know, so what? But you have a great new learning curve again, right? It's a new learning curve every time you move departments, you move locations, you move companies, but stick by it, right? Give it enough time to evolve. Emily went to a sales role, from sales cohort, you know, exec to senior sales. I think that's great. So that's something that I think if Scott wants to do, yeah, go for it. You learn so much in the different discipline in the hotel. And likewise, I had at least 3 divisions, F&B, rooms, and sales and marketing, to actually prepare me better to be a general manager.
Brendan, would you agree with Jack's comment?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Scott, it is a really great question. The key thing is, in my mind, when I face roles similar, like a conundrum like that, is what is the key takeaway? Why do you think you need to do that? What are the key learning experiences, exposures, systems, platforms, stakeholder management? What is the key thing that you are trying to learn by doing that lateral move? If it is experiencing almost for the sake of, you can get that through cross exposure, right? Like if you sit in a hotel environment and you get to sit on, you know, revenue and yield meetings, you will learn the vernacular and the language for the sales and marketing piece, right? As you start to talk about, excuse me, a piece of business, you're doing end of month reviews and looking through P&Ls, that financial acumen will come. So be really specific about what it is you want to learn from that lateral move. Because if you can, that's the thing that will keep you buoyant, because you will see someone else now take that role that you may feel like you've worked towards, and you have to be really comfortable with that, that they may then progress through into something else. And you can't ever sit there and go, I could have had that, right? You have to be really game face about, like, I took this role because I needed to learn X, Y, and Z. My game plan is 12 to 18 months from now, then I'm going to parlay that into what? Have an idea in mind. It doesn't have to necessarily land squarely between the outlines, but give yourself some framework so you can really feel successful about that at the end of the day, because you're the way you'd measured success up to that point, if you're now stepping sideways, may change, and you may lose some of that framing that you would typically have.
Another good comment. Emily.
I think I'm going to actually just take a bit of that advice on board as well, Brendan. Yeah, because I sometimes in this position, like I'm in this hotel position partly because of the COVID situation that's happened. I'm very grateful for it. But there's a part of me that really, really wants to go and do like that director of sales and marketing in a really big hotel in like a 5-star, like 500 bedroom back in London or like Asia. There is a part of me still wanting that. But to the other points you said, completely right. You know, I though do feel I had quite a lot of exposure to housekeeping. Like I can make a bed, I can clean a room. I have been like, you know, you do that because you're like, sure, when you're short staffed, you jump in and you understand the wage percentage costs of, you know, it's a time build department. And, you know, like you said, you learn that along the way, even though I haven't been a, you know, housekeeping supervisor. You know, I work very closely with chefs. It's one of my favorite things. So I understand, you know, the wage, like the costing and the things like that. And, you know, actually, funny enough, I've been living in this hotel for 5 weeks because of Orange being in lockdown. So I'm extremely good at checking in and out guests again, and dealing with customer complaints and things like that. So you definitely get exposure if you want it, I suppose, in the position you're in, if you're open to it. And if you show interest, you have a great, you know, manager or mentor that allows that. But yeah, that was really great, actually. Thank you, Brendan, even for myself, to really actually think about that. If you are going to move laterally, it's a tough one. Like you really got to be sure or know the pros and cons of it, I suppose. Be okay with that.
Yeah. When I moved countries, I was director of operations of a Hilton hotel in San Francisco, you know, 400 plus rooms, massive, like multi-restaurant, big meeting convention space. I've been there for 5 years and I was moving back to Australia, and I consciously wanted to work for the company I work for, so with IHG, but it was the role I wanted to take was a rooms division manager at a 200 room airport hotel at a Holiday Inn. And now I bled green for 4 years after that, right? So I'm all for the brand, but I was really clear on 3 things and the 3 reasons why that this move on paper, you go, huh? But absolutely for me, I went like, no, this is clear guardrails. This is going to be measures of success. And if I do this right, then the next 8 years write themselves. And so far, through delivering on that and all the rest of the expectations placed over the time, I've continued to keep that journey going. So the only person it has to be meaningful for is you, right? Like, don't let anyone else's, you have to be really good with it at the end of the day.
I think the ability is there for anybody. If you think about, you know, if I think about my first food and beverage manager role, you've almost got blinkers on and you're so focused on learning about food and beverage in the hotel and where the kitchen is and where the pass is and the systems and processes in place for that hotel. But someone can probably prove me wrong, but I don't think there's any role in a hotel where you can't expand your knowledge base from being the waiter in the restaurant to being the GM. There's opportunities there all the time. And one of the things, I mean, I've mentored a lot of students over the years, and the first thing I used to say was, and I'll talk about this earlier, does anyone know who you are? Oh, not really. Have you met the GM? I met them once when I started at the hotel, and I tell them, and this is probably hopefully going to be amazing for workplace health and safety committees across the country. But I say join the workplace health and safety committee, because that gives you the opportunity to sit down with department heads, and most of the time the general manager, head of talent and culture, whatever. And you talk about the hotel. So you learn about the different departments, the different issues in the departments. You have to go and do inspections of the other departments in those hotels. So you get to go and meet the people in the other hotels. And it starts opening your eyes up to what a hotel really is. And then if you think about it, just a waiter, you know, suddenly they've got access to marketing because they went and spoke to the marketing manager, and they learn about the promotions that are going to be happening in the restaurant that are coming up because they've seen the marketing plan, or the financial controller talking about how many covers they've done in the restaurant that night and what the plan is to increase the capture rate. And then suddenly you're working out, if I work faster and more efficiently, we can get more covers through, you know. So I think initially everyone blinkers on, but eventually if you start and are open to taking those blinkers off, all the learning is out there. You just got to go and make sure that you're open to it and you find someone who's going to guide you through it.
Thanks again, Scott, for your question. It sounds like we're all in violent agreement there. I think what's coming through is that, you know, whichever decision you take here, this is not going to be necessarily the be all and end all of your career. You will get the breadth and you will get the promotion, and they will come. I suppose what nobody has said is take the title, because it's really important. So the only thing that I would add is, and I would have when I was 20 years ago, but nobody on this panel has today. And so the only thing I'd say is take the title out of it and put the people into it. Who do you want to be working with, and what do you want to be doing at your stage in your career? But it should have nothing to do with those around you or the title you're changing. Thanks again for your question. I've got another question here from Sebastian, which I thought was really nice as well. I'm wondering what the panelists think about what the titles and climbing the career ladder now actually means to them in hindsight. Is it worth it, and why? Another great question, thank you. Who wants to start?
Look, I think we've gone through that. The whole zigzag, you're not sitting there chasing the title. I mean, look, I'm the same as Brendan. I knew I wanted to be a general manager before I went to hotel management school.
But you're there now. Was it all worth it?
Yeah, it has been worth it. It's been worth it both from I guess working my way from a career perspective and also from a personal perspective. You know, I've got to go and live on an island. I've got to go and work in some amazing cities. I've got to go and work overseas. And by doing that, I've had those experiences, and I've met my wife. I've had 2 children, and I've seen most of New Zealand and probably half of Australia. And I was never chasing the title. I was chasing the role that was always going to assist me in getting to the next title. But it was nothing about brand or size of hotel or location. It was what was going to help me. So I'm pretty happy with the path that I took. It wasn't a chosen path, because the path only opens up when you're at the end of the path that you're originally, you know, that you're sitting in at the point in time, and there's a path that way or a path that way, and it's just you got to make the choice which way you want to go.
Jack, what about yourself? Was it all worth it, or would you prefer to be in a dark revenue office somewhere?
Absolutely not. Although the picture here looks like I'm very comfortable in that role. No. The revenue role was actually was a bit of an accident. I wanted to be in sales. I went for a job for a sales role. I think it was a sales coordinator. You know, the guy that print contract and read through it and go around from table to table, get the boss to stamp. So you know how it's like, Emily, right?
Yeah.
So that's okay. But the mentor I had at the time say something interesting. Look, I really like your personality. You look like the geek that can talk. So we need a geek in our revenue department. For our students in Suzhou, that means nerds that can talk. So anyway, I got into revenue, I accepted the role, learned my way through it. My first role, I grow from 1 property to 9, and so on. So it was never meant to be, if it was like a bus stop, I was never meant to get off that bus stop. I was meant to sitting through my rooms division path and keep going. But yeah, so never. Like I said, I think it was a comfort zone that called me out to hit apply button on seek.com at the time.
And when was that?
That was with Voyages. Voyages Hotels and Resorts, yeah. When it was a group of 20 hotels and resorts, yeah.
Does seek.com still exist?
Fond memory.
It's been a while since I've been back in Australia. I wasn't sure. And I didn't mean to age you there, Jack, either. Thank you. Emily, what about yourself? Was it?
No worries.
You're quite new into the role that you're in right now. It's your first executive management position or property-wide role. Was it what you thought it would be?
Have to deal with a lot of staff complaints. But I didn't realize I have to care so much. No, I definitely care, guys. It is different, and I think it's also different in two ways. One, we're a smaller regional property, so we don't have, I guess, the strength and the backing that, say, Marriott, IHG, Accor, these bigger companies have built over time. The property I actually work for, we're the second in the brand. The first property is half our size and has been there for 7 years. And then we just opened and they want to build 2 more in the next 4 years. And I am busy trying to build the actual foundation of the company, right? No, I do not think I would be here. As I said, when I was sitting pretty in London, I was like, yeah, my next role is going to be like a assistant director of sales or events or something. I'll learn slowly. Like, that's what I wanted, because I did the same as Nathan. I like jumped too fast at the beginning of my career. So I was like, I'm going to take my time. I'm going to take, slowly work your way up. I was happy with that. When I got the opportunity here in Orange, when the hotel manager position came up, it was very sudden. The hotel manager just left. I saw her one day and then she's gone the next. And there was a big gap that needed to be filled. I didn't know if I could do it. I'm going to be very honest. But I felt that the team needed guidance and they needed someone to step in. And I'm trying my best to do that. Is it how I thought my life was going to look like? No. Is it how I thought an executive leadership position would look like? Well, I didn't really know what that was. I thought it'd be way more, like, less fighting around management meeting tables and like more people agreeing on stuff. But I guess it's life. It's how things get built. It's how hospitality, and we're so young. I believe I'm looking at 5-10 years time. I work hard now to get this property and this company in a position so that in 5 years time, if all of us join up for this panel again, maybe I'll be having a very different conversation here and saying, yeah, we're smooth now, like things are going the right way. I don't know if you can ever know what to expect unless you've done it. I don't know. Yeah.
I love the comment. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, very honest.
Just before you continue, there's been another great question here that I might pick up on now, just because you've just spoken, Emily. Following your previous comment, I believe at some point we have all had an experience in this industry that kicks our passion to the side and makes us consider if hospitality is the path to follow. Has this ever happened to any of you? And if so, what has brought you back to the light? I thought we might dwell a little bit on the horrible things that have happened to us tonight. And Emily was really kind enough to share one of them. Jens, would you like to share another one of yours? Has there ever been a time where you felt like, you know what, bugger it, hospitality is not for me?
Look, I think. Oh, you go, Brent.
No. I was going to say I've definitely quit a boss before, and it made me really question some choices. But like, I was director of ops for Hilton Sydney for a short spell, and my wife was 5 months pregnant. I'd been there for about 3 months. I was working like 16, 17 hours a day, 6 days a week. The GM was new to the hotel 5 days before I got there. So basically we had a constant, the pen goes this way, and then he'd be like, no, the pen goes that way, right? And like, so every time I'd walk around, and it's a massive hotel, huge everything, right? And getting to know the team, every chance was like, felt like I was undermined. But I loved the team. So I stuck it out, I did all the stuff. And then it got to the point where even my wife, she's like, you are just a different shade of gray. And she's been with me we've been together for 16 years. So she's seen me for a lot of my hospitality career. And so again, literally 5 month pregnant wife, I just said to them, I was like, you clearly need someone different. This is not who I am. Purpose is shattered. It's not going to work. You want something to just fundamentally different than what I'm willing to give you. And I'm willing to give you absolutely everything. It's just different to what you need. so I'm out, I'm done. And we said our goodbyes, and 8 days later, I was the operations manager at Holiday Inn Old Sydney, because I'd left the bridges mended with IHG. They realized when I left to take this transition that they didn't have a role for me at the time. They totally understood. We had really good communication. We were very open and transparent, and I delivered on everything that I'd been asked to do. So they understood the why for the original move. But yeah, you quit a boss, man. I've quit a boss. And at that point I was like, I burnt that brand out of my mind, and I love that brand. I worked for him for a long time. I bled blue, right? And I was like, nah, done. We're out. Peace out.
Thank you. Nathan, you were going to say something?
I think, my darkest days were what I reflected on before when I had that decision of, someone saying you're not good enough. Even at that stage, I don't think I ever said, all right, that's it, I'm leaving the industry. My choice at that time was go to China or go to New Zealand. And I felt, China was a great option back then because it was a massively growing industry. And I probably could have been, in a very different title to what I am now, because you've had so much opportunity for growth over there. But I chose to sort of take a step sideways. So we talked about the sideways step, and I went to New Zealand. And as I said, that set me up for the rest of my career. So even at my darkest time then, I didn't even think about leaving hospitality. But I would say now, during COVID, it has been the hardest possible thing to deal with. There's nothing harder than having to let go of good people, close hotels, and there's no end in sight, right? There's no opening date or finalisation that, right, COVID's going to be finished on the 31st of December, just in time for New Year's Eve. Yes, it's been tough, but we're all going to be fine from the start of next year. So I think the hardest thing for me has been, not that I want to leave the industry, it's been the toughest mentally and the toughest in terms of what's happened to the teams, good teams that I've worked with. And I've seen it more. I've seen it more from people starting to leave the industry, people that I never thought would leave the industry. Yeah. And they've got their reasons why. And I'm worried that, other good people are going to have those same thoughts. And when you see it happening, you start thinking about it yourself. So it's probably the only time that I've thought about, I wonder what else is out there. But the reality of it is, at the moment, there's no industry that's not suffering. Particularly in Australia, I'm not 100% across the other countries, but certainly in Australia, everyone is suffering. And everyone's probably thinking exactly the same thing. And, there's probably going to be a switch of people out of one industry into another, and it's going to be a rotation. But I think now's the toughest time, and now's the time where people have had to work in hospitality and do something very different to what they are used to, which is being with a customer. I work out of a quarantine facility at the moment, and the last thing you want to do is be anywhere near a customer. You can call them on the phone and have a conversation with them and give them amazing food and check in on them every day, but you can't physically sit down there and have a conversation with someone and do what you were trained to do. That has had an impact on a lot of people, in the fact that they've gone, well, I don't want to do this anymore. So as I said, when people start talking about it, or you start seeing people that you never thought would ever leave the industry, or companies have had to go through restructures and people leave or are made redundant that you never thought would ever leave, that's pretty tough. That's pretty tough. And that plays, I'm sure that's playing on everyone's mind at the moment.
Yeah, even as you say, the current challenge facing the industry is unlike anything else that we've seen, and I don't think any of us know how we're going to see past this. But even outside of COVID, the great irony of our industry is that the better you get at it, the less you're able to practice it, right? You get successful, and then all of a sudden you get put in an office and taken away from the guests. And then you get into a bigger office and taken even further away from the guests. And the only thing I'd add to the answer to yet again another great question is, If ever you are feeling like you want to leave hospitality, just figure out the reason why you wanted to get into it in the first place, and give yourself permission to get back to that. For me, it's getting back to the guests and get back and remember why you got in the industry in the first place, because at its core, it is pretty amazing and unique and unlike anything else in the world. But when you're sitting in an office like we all are, it can very easily become just any other office job. And that's where I've been at my lowest. Oh, excuse me.
I was just going to say that I had a talent and culture manager once who said to me, the day you wake up out of bed and you don't want to go to work is the day that you need to change your role. So I think the last thing you want to do is be that person who's disengaged and not happy at work, which is highly visible to people that are well trained, and then ruin your career because you suddenly become this person that's painful to have in the workplace, that doesn't want to drive forward, doesn't want to assist the team, whatever. So that's the last thing you want to do. So if you hit that stage, it might not be that you need to change the industry. You need to do the zigzag and find out, well, what's something that's going to challenge me, that's going to bring me closer to the guests so that I can be re-engaged.
I think
that brings me, Emily, and I think this is a question for you to answer that's somewhat aligned. Do you have any, so this is from Nam, do you have any advice for me as I'm feeling kind of lost at the moment within my position? I'm currently working as a GSA, but because of the pandemic, things have been going exactly the same during the past 6 or 7 months. Even though I have reached out to my manager to have a short transition into another department so I could learn more. Do you have any advice? And I thought that segues quite nicely into what Nathan was talking about. So Emily, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really tough one because, as you said, like nothing's really moving forward at this time. You know, the industry is very stagnant. But like the guys said, I think, you know, remembering why you loved hospitality. I mean, that's why I couldn't join the army. I mean, I just loved this industry just too damn much, you know. I think you've done a great job, first of all, by approaching your manager. It's really hard, you know, to actually tell them. Sometimes it's very intimidating, anything really. One, it's intimidating to admit maybe you're unhappy in your role because you feel like you're failed. That's why I stayed in the job that I was unhappy in for so long, and then it crushed my soul. But then I came back. So you've done the right thing first, is talking to your manager. It's very hard. I mean, there's a lot, it depends where you are and what's available, but hopefully, you know, keep on it and say to them, you know, it's something that you're really passionate in, cross-training, experience in other areas, trying to get that. Also, one of the things when I felt that I needed more out of what I was doing, but, you know, maybe my manager was too busy doing their job to assist or something, was I would actually go out and find someone else in my hotel. So like I said, I'd go see the director of banquets. You know, I'd say like, hey, is there something, you know, I've got 30 minutes extra, I'll stay back for 30 minutes and I'll help you with this. And then once I learned how to do that, he would come in and say, hey, if someone in your department has time that knows what they're doing, can they help me out with this? So, you know, I need an extra staff for this. And it opened doors. Kind of back to what Nathan said, do people know who you are? And it's not about being cocky about who you are. It's just about people remember your work ethic and people remember that part about you. So maybe those small steps, I mean, maybe this is terrible advice, boys, you can probably help me out. But yeah, reaching out to maybe that. Yeah, maybe even your GM, I don't know if they're approachable. A lot of the companies I've worked for, the smaller ones, the GM would want us to come direct to them, the operations director. Yeah, see how that goes.
Jack, would you agree with that advice, and how would you recommend approaching?
Yeah, everything that Emily says, and I wanted to piggyback on the smaller hotels. I think it's a lot easier to do that in smaller hotel, but if you work in a big hotel like what Brendan mentioned, Hilton, with multi-hundred rooms, if there is 50 odd people that wants to move across different departments, it's a little bit of a nightmare for a general manager to execute that. One request could also mean, there's probably 10 other that we have not heard, right? So I think in a larger hotel, one needs to be a little bit more open and patient, but in smaller hotel, absolutely. You just go and knock on the GM's door, have a coffee, buy him a coffee. But usually the GM will pay for it anyway. And then some minutes chat, right? And say, look, I want to learn flipping the burger or something, right? GM will never say no in a smaller hotel. It's a lot easier. So we all aspire to work with great leaders and bosses, but sometimes you come across with some that are not very supportive, and that's a little bit tricky one, right? And maybe at times speaking to HR may help a little bit, expressing to more than one person could help also. It depends on the workplace that you are in, I guess.
Thank you, Jack. Brendan, you were talking before about how you've quit a manager.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And how did you know that you got to the point where it wasn't just your ego or your lack of knowledge that was getting in the way?
Yeah. So, and I think it actually talks to the note that's Seb's put back up here on the chat, right? It's around our purposes just did not match. I had done the role in the States at Hilton, similar size hotel, for 5 years. I was now doing it here with just a different leader. And yeah, the number of rooms was plus 150, but again, at that stage, it's just scale, right? The ballroom space was a bit bigger. And again, at that stage, it's just scale. But it wasn't through a lack of effort or energy, because every energy I had was poured into it. And it was because I believed in what the end outcome was. At that time, again, I'd just been working for Hilton, so I was part of their whole Blue Energy initiative that rolled out in the States, and what that fundamentally meant and how that actually was brought to life through its people. And so again, I drank the Kool-Aid. I totally got it and I was in. It was that at every point that person did not, I'm okay, you can, let's have a constructive conversation, challenge my thinking, challenge me, tell me to go away and reframe a thought process, an idea, a strategy, etc. And let's work on it together to a common goal, common good, but simply to tear pieces off of things for almost for sport. That's where we kind of like, I don't want to be that leader either. And if I'm going to work for a leader, I want to emulate something about you. If I'm going to continue to work for you as a leader, I actually want to take something away. I want to learn and broaden my bookends of what leadership should be like. And I wanted none of his bookends at all. In fact, I put it in the left-hand one that was, because even a bad leader, great learning, because you can kind of go as a new leader, like, I will never do that because that is horrible and it makes you feel like crap. Don't do that. So this was very much filling the other bookend. And some of the best leaders that gave me the best lessons actually were GMs that I was unexpected. A finance GM, I was like, this guy, I could run circles around him in operations. And then I was like, but he blew my mind. So you quit a boss, you quit a job because the purpose doesn't match anymore. You're not inspired, you're not motivated, you're not, you can't buy into that story any longer, and you know you can do it somewhere else. So why die on a hill for something that's never going to change, right? Like, cool, I can fulfill my bucket elsewhere. Thank you for playing.
Yeah, potentially a silver lining. In another couple of years, those bosses will be harder to come across because they will be weeded out very quickly. Yeah.
Can I say one final thing on that though is, be okay talking to people about it. It might feel like a failure, right? Like I went in and it was 3 months and this is a thing that I know that I could do and blah, blah, blah. And so I have a very good support network who were very, encouraging and all that sort of stuff. And I took a really big risk in actually leaving. Again, talk to my wife about the story. It comes out a little bit differently, right? From her perspective, being pregnant. But the people that I told and I trusted with, the number of them that said, I was in a terrible job and I wish I had quit sooner. I wish I had left. I wish I had got that learning, but I did 3 years behind the master. I was there for 2 years and it was like the worst experience I ever had. but I didn't know how to actually walk away from it. I didn't know that it was that bad until I did. And I was like, what was I thinking? So it's absolutely okay. It's not a measure of good or bad, or rather to find the best situation for yourself, even though it might scare the crap out of you. It's absolutely okay to take that leap, because trust me, you'll find support in those around you who go, I would totally, I got your back, man. I was through something similar and it was the best thing I ever did. And that they'll be more proud of you for making the tough choice than for sticking out the painful choice.
Great comment. Thank you. We have a couple more questions here, and these are great questions, guys. So thanks so much for contributing them. I am trying to get through as many as we can. Let's pick up on this one right now, because we were sort of talking about the climate that we're currently going through. You touched base on the current climate and the loss of talent. What do you think will be the key for talent recruitment and retention moving forward? A little off topic, but let's go there. I think it's a really nice point that's alongside what we were talking about.
Well, I'm dealing with that right now in Western Australia. If anybody wants to come to Western Australia, there's some great opportunities.
They can't get in. Nobody can get in.
Yeah.
You will have to isolate, but hey, we'll get through that. Okay. At a call, we pay for isolation anyway. I think
I'm there next week.
The key thing I'm talking to government about, particularly over here, is thank you, Brendan, opening up the borders so that we can get talent into the industry. But I think the thing that I'm worried the most about is that, and if you think about Blue Mountains, in the title, it was Blue Mountains International Hotel Management School, and the school, back when I was there was, you had Swedish and Chinese and Malaysian and Thai and Korean and Australian, New Zealand. We had people from everywhere that came in and went to the school up on campus. And we don't have those people coming in anymore. There's a small selection of people who are still here from before COVID. And there are people that are graduating from hospitality institutions within Australia at the moment, but the pool of people and talent is small. So we need the borders opened up to allow that talent to come in, and also other countries will want that talent coming from Australia as well. So we've got to build up the talent that's within the country, and then we need to incentivise those people to come back into our hotels and to go into our regions, particularly because, the industry at the moment is on its knees. It's at the lowest point that it can possibly be at. Whilst New South Wales, Victoria are in lockdown, effectively Western Australia is in lockdown as well, because no one can travel here. And our hotels are struggling just as much as the hotels in the middle of Sydney. So we're all in lockdown, regardless of what state we're in. We're all struggling, and we need to get through. So we need those borders opened up as soon as possible, so that we can get the talent travelling through the country again, so that people can have those experiences. And then there's going to have to be a massive push in terms from a federal government perspective to drive international students back into this country, so that we can utilise that talent. I think that's going to be the hardest thing to do. It's been something that we've fought for many years. I mean, even when we're a normalised industry, just to get chefs on a certain type of visa in a remote location or in a city was exceptionally tough. So I think we, as an industry, we've got to have that voice, and we've got to open up the borders, get the talent in here, get the talent into the hospitality institutions to do training, and then from an incentive perspective from the hotel companies, I think they will look at very different ways of how we recruit. Gonna Seek. It won't be via Seek. It'll be via word of mouth. It'll be via WhatsApp chat groups. It'll be Facebook pages. It'll be different ways that we're doing it. And then when people get there, the processes that we used to go through in the past in terms of recruitment will be shortened. I think it's going to be a very different industry and a fun industry to see, because we're all going to need this talent very soon, and everyone's going to need it at the same time. So it's going to be a competitive environment.
Just to pick up on that theme a little bit, a question from Jake. A mentor once told me it was never just a role. Your role is much more than just a GSA or a sales coordinator, etc. For someone wanting a career in hospitality and working casually at the moment and may only see the industry and the position it is in now, what would you tell them? What advice would you give them?
Oh, listen, hospitality is a vicious mistress. Once she sinks her teeth into you, you don't get away that easy, right? Like, there's a reason we all gravitate towards it. There's a reason why we find it engaging and purposeful, etc. And it's not only the guest experience piece, it's actually the camaraderie that we have with our teams that we get to work with. It's why you stick around, right? And it will get back there. Like, never you might, like, it will get back there. Yes, it is going through the most difficult time ever. But just remember, we're all in the same storm but different boats. Like, everyone's going to get there. It will still come out the other side. And I think to Nathan's point, it'll actually come out in a way that is on the back of an evolution that was required anyway. I think that hospitality is entering a phase where it finally gets looked at, hopefully, as a professional industry and not just a workers industry, because those first sort of few tiers in a hotel feel very much of a worker industry, right? But the reality is, if you look under the roof of a hotel, you have everything from, Deloitte-worthy professional services under sales, marketing, revenue, finance, all the way through to technical components like engineering, right? Then you've got logistical components as well through rooms duty, etc. But at the top end of that, you then got corporate and hotel companies that have even more sophisticated networks that are national sales, global sales, hotel life cycle and growth, development, all of that stuff under one single umbrella of hospitality. So it will get there. Just know that you need short-term payoff, short-term payback, which is find value in the people you get to work with. Find purpose in the organizations that you get to start with and say, I believe in the every day that I get to do, and every day I get to participate with this great bunch of people. And if you have that, that's got to fill your bucket somehow in hospitality. That's actually part of the reason we do this. No one has ever made $100 million a year working in a hotel, particularly no general manager. There's no golden parachute. Bonuses are a very rare thing, right? So you have to find that as part of the reason you do this. Otherwise, you might not be in the right industry in the first place, and that's okay. But find purpose for what you do. Look at the people around you. Enjoy their work with them. The rest of it will come. Be tenacious. Ask questions. Be open to the process, and everything else the great panelists have said so far today rings true.
Yeah, and I think, as I said earlier, I've had to let some amazing people go. In this industry, there wasn't nothing to do with their fault of their own. It was just the size of the business had to downgrade the hotel, reduced occupancy. So there's a part of me that says be grateful for the fact that you're still employed, because there are a lot of people, good people, experienced people who are not. But they've gone and found different industries, and I'm glad about that. But you've got to hang in there for the time being. This is probably going to be the toughest thing that will ever hit us. We've had disasters in the past, but they've been isolated to a country or an industry, or it's a short period of time. This is something that's affecting the whole world. So we're all in it together. We're all struggling through. And I know, as I said, there might not be a light at the end of the tunnel right now, but think about the opportunities that are going to be coming up when borders start opening up and hotels start increasing their occupancy and tourists start entering the country. We talk about the rise and the zigzag. It's going to go off. It's going to go off. There's going to be so much opportunity. So don't be short-sighted and pull out now.
I think you should hashtag that. I think you should hashtag that and put that on the YouTube thing. It's going to go off, and just like over the thumbnail for.
What's the exact hashtag?
Hashtag, it's going to go off. Hospitality, it's going to go off.
I thought it was going to be "Don't pull out now." That's a
Yeah,
very different
me
hashtag.
too.
We have some questions from the social campus as well. Jack, I know that you've got some of those questions there. Would you like to moderate with some of those questions there, and maybe be able to attack some of those questions, particularly?
Yeah, thank you.
Regarding, yeah, thank you. I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Justin. I'm smiling as I'm looking at this question because I get this all the time when I interview graduates or intern in China. I think my 7 years time in China. So yes, I'm still smiling looking at this. So the first questions, in fact, all of the questions are very strategic and very fact sheet type of questions. Let me try to answer it without being too mathematical. What are the suitable niches for the different kinds of people? That's the first question. So I think in China may operate differently. Business as usual. We don't have roadblocks. With COVID, there's probably cluster outbreak here and there. So other than the circumstances we are in, I think the suitable niches is really to its student to answer, right? If you're a bit of a quiet type, maybe you can look at back of house. If you're the bubbly type, then go for the front of house. I would not name a specific role. So, you know, students comes with different upbringing and personality and, you know, where you want to be, right? Then the second question, how much money do you earn per year as a general manager? I can't answer that question. I think it's a very broad question. It's like, how much would the
Jack,
CEO make in a year?
Sorry to interrupt, Jack. Both Brendan and Nathan are happy to disclose their salaries. We spoke about it before. Emily, welcome to as well if you like.
Not enough. Not enough.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
I can't even afford walls.
We know you're on your yacht, Justin. That's why the waves are knocking you.
10 coconuts a year.
And Brandon's big brother house. It's so lovely. Yeah. And then there's also a question on how many years does it take to become a general manager? So I think the two questions in one. It depends in what size of property. The small one, is it a 3-star? Is it a luxury? Is it a 5-star? Is it a resort? I think the more challenging the location and positioned, the more complex it is. Obviously, you know, a general manager in those environments can make as much as a CEO of a small hotel company, you know, so it really depends. I think as a student, my advice would be looking at these questions for suitable students, which are mainly Chinese students, is don't focus too much on how much salary and how niche can you get. If the job is very difficult, could I get more high salary? I think a lot of what we talk about in this panel in the last hour and a half never talk about salary. You know, I don't think any of us actually focus on that, even when we change jobs. I think the salary will come definitely once you are maybe in middle management position, then you go into a senior management or executive committee level and so on and so on. But I think your first entry to the industry should not be on monetary basis. You certainly can make more money in other industry. I think hospitality is fun, always about a wonderful island where, yeah, there's a few guests to look after and you get paid a lot. I think it's very rare to find those kind of jobs. So can I color my hair while I do internship in hotel? That's the last question. It depends. What extreme would you go to? You know, black hair or a little bit brown or off black. Red color, maybe suit for certain lifestyle brand. I don't know, Brandon or Emily, you work for Kimpton, Voco.
What color is your hair?
Would you have a tattoo on your face?
You know, like
Does dyeing it from grey to black count?
No, that's just maintenance, I think.
Oh, okay. I've always said tattoos, beards and piercings, no problems in any of our brands as long as you've got the personality to back it up.
Yeah.
There you
But
go.
like-
So I think that
but-
answered the student
Yeah,
question.
but don't walk to the front desk with like bright pink hair, like neon pink hair if you walk in like working a very conservative and you haven't like checked it out yet, because that could be a really strange way to hand your notice in.
Yeah.
The answer is I've worked in places where you can, and I've worked in places that you haven't, or that you can't. And maybe that speaks to, and this is one thing that we're almost out of time, but we haven't spoken about how important a role a property or a company plays to an individual as well. And really, it seems that's a completely new webinar. It would have been great to touch on that. But if you can find one that does let you color your hair and that's important to you, geez, I reckon you're halfway there to finding a pretty good hotel or a pretty good company. We are almost out of time, folks. We've only got about 5 or 6 minutes left. I see that there's 4 or 5 or 6 now questions that have come in that we haven't had time to answer. And for that, I am really sorry. What I will commit to is if there is a way, and I will have to confirm this with our technical team, but if there is a way that we can remove these questions and actually send them around, I'm sure our team today will commit to answering those, even if they are written. And then Petra, do we have a way that we could send that out to attendees today? She's muted, but there might be just one last question that I'm sure Petra would love us to finish on, and that's another one from Min. BM has a huge alumni network. Have any of you used the BM alumni network in the early stages of your careers?
Yes. My first job was actually because an ex-student, Charles Young, who graduated about 4 or 5 years before I did. He was working for a company called Ocean Properties in the States, and he came over to do an introduction session, and they said that they were looking for potentially some manager in training roles. And so we went to a panel interview and then a one-on-one interview. And so my first job that set me off in the States was a manager in training, and it was thanks to Charles Young. So 100% it is a thing.
I'd say 2000% as well. I mean, to me, it's the one thing I can, in fact, more than one job that I can think of have been gotten because I am an alumni, not because I performed better than anyone else, but it got me to the table. Yeah. And that counts for so much. It counts for so much when you're looking for people to hire, when you're out there. And so to anyone, no matter what stage of their career, and if and when I move on from this property, I will be approaching the alumni network and going, hey, what's out there? That'll be my first port of call. This is the gift that keeps giving to me. And there'll be people out there that don't remember Val Cook. And if you are that young, well done for being that young, but you missed out on an amazing, amazing man. And to the graduates out there, we now have to pick up the slack of that amazing, amazing man because the amount of careers that was helped by Val Cook and the alumni group was immeasurable. Mm-hmm. And that's the value that this property has, or that this collection has of people. Anyone want to add to that?
Yeah, I think the school's the start of those relationships, and yeah, as you said, you sort of have the relationships with someone like a Val who used to organise events across countries, catch ups around countries, and people that you didn't even know were from Blue Mountains in your city, or you caught up with friends that used to be in your years or above you. So the alumni department and the alumni itself is exceptionally important. I think people have probably used me more than I've used them. Initially, I got into a couple of roles through connections with Blue Mountains, but I don't know if we all remember there used to be a resume template or a CV template, and anyone who applied for a role, you could tell instantly that they were from Blue Mountains because you knew the template back to front. But actually, I enjoyed that because that was one of my first questions that I'd try and have that personal approach with someone who's obviously nervous coming into an interview and say, have you worked at Blue? Did you go to Blue Mountains? And they're like, oh yeah, I did. And then you break the ice and you have that conversation and you find out that true personality of someone because you've got that commonality.
Emily, have you ever used the alumni for your own purposes or for getting stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to lie. Networking has always been very daunting to me. I know I sound really like a chatterbox, but yeah, I've really hated the term networking and everything. But it's definitely lovely to know that they're there. I've definitely kept in touch with a lot of people from, my graduating years. I had a bit of a mess with, not a mess, but I've moved around. I actually started at the Australian International Hotel School in Canberra. And then when that was around, and then I went to the Blue Mountains for 1 year, and then I went to the Sydney school. So I met a lot of people. And it is lovely to know that there is a support network there that it's okay to reach out to with hard questions like we're answering now. And people often feel awkward about asking for help for your career. I did it. I was the same when I was younger. I thought, oh no, I won't bother them because they don't know me. They don't, why should they help me? But that, we're all a big family, and that's lovely to feel a part of, not only because we went to the same school, but because we're all in the industry. Hospitality is a big family. Like you said, you wouldn't work in this industry if you didn't love it. So that's lovely feeling. Yeah.
And Jack, does it, through your travels, have you been in constant touch with the alumni, or has it been something that you've not called upon?
I try to do more. I mean, in China, I think, and even back in Thailand and Singapore, whenever I move country or locations, I get in touch with Petra and Val Cook in the past to see who is in the area, right? And then from there, it grows into, coffee meetup and so on. In China, I would love to do more. And I think for students in Suzhou, if you're listening to me, hopefully I'll make a visit to the school. And maybe some of you can also intern in our hotels, right? Don't be shy to ask questions. You can find us on LinkedIn, if not in the days of sick.com. Justin, there was no LinkedIn at that time,
No.
I really didn't know how to find
no internet.
Blue Mountain
Pretty
people,
sure.
unless you ask them or they ask you. It was a Nokia time, brick 3210 Nokia. So usually it's the HR that would say, hey, I know somebody else from the Blue Mountain in this hotel, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So those were the days, yeah. But now it's a lot easier to communicate.
Absolutely. Hey, thank you. It's at this point in the webinar that if it wasn't a webinar, if we were there in person, I'd be presenting bottles of champagne. And I must say that we've gone all out this year, the alumni group. We've got magnums of French champagne there with me here. So it's a shame that we can't give them to our panelists today, but one way or another, I'm sure everyone who listened in appreciates what you have given us today and what you've shared with us today. For our point of view, I'm just so glad that you all said yes, and thank you very much for giving us a little bit of your insight as to what's made your career so interesting, successful, and genuinely enjoyable by the sounds of it. Thank you to everyone over there, and I think all that's left is to leave it to our host to sign off, but have a great evening or afternoon, and thanks again for listening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Justin, for facilitating.
Yeah, thank you.
Take it easy, everyone.